Well, good evening, everyone. How are you? Good. So I could stay on point and get through it rather rapidly, I went on and decided to write down my little speech. I call it my crib notes because I generally don't write speeches. Let me start off by saying this. One thing I don't do when I'm talking to conservatives is trying to sell them on conservative principles. You should already understand it if you're a conservative. Am I right? Okay? So why do I have to tell you that I support limited government? Shouldn't have to tell you that. I shouldn't have to tell you that I believe that parents should have the purview of their children's education, school choice. I shouldn't have to sell you on how important the Second Amendment is, so I don't. You want to know where I stand on the issues? My website is grayson2014.com. I've got these brochures. It's even in these. You can read it. You can grill me. You can reach me on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. You can even call me up and I'll talk to you about it if you so desire. But I assure you that I am intimately familiar with conservative principles. That's why I am a proud member of the Republican Party. So what is it that I do? I focus on awakenings. We are a nation of those who sleep, and the things that we should be paying attention to, we don't. Matt said earlier, we want to elect some real conservatives. Why has that become a problem? Mr. Paget said, our job is to get some Republicans elected. We have a national mandate from the RNC. We need to be more inclusive. Somebody recognizes that something is wrong. We have a problem. I'm going to tell you about some of those problems. First, I hear the term grassroots all the time. Now, let me break that word down for you. Grass and the roots. What is it that most folk don't see when you're talking about grass? You don't see the roots unless you bend down there and pull the grass up out of the ground. That's when you see the roots. Well, who represents the roots? The roots are the foundation of the grass. The roots hold everything up. That's us. But most of these folk that we keep electing over and over again, career politicians, they talk about grassroots, but they don't give a hoot about the grassroots, or shall I say, the roots, because they can't see the roots. Therein lies another part of the problem. Now, another thing I like to do, I give the bad news first. I've been told by different folk, look, Derrick, when you go in there with something positive first. That's not how I roll. I want you to understand the true nature of what it is we're really dealing with. So let's get to it. 3 things, and these are some undeniable truths. You will not win if you try to tell me that I'm wrong, because these are undeniable. You can't deny them. Things are not getting better. They're not. Our debt, ever increasing. When has it gone down? Wars, continuous. I remember a particular gentleman said, elect me and I'm going to bring those troops home. Got in there and adopted the same drawdown plan that Bush had. And then tried to unilaterally go into Libya. Things are not getting better. I hear people promise time and time again, I support tax reform, but I have never seen one piece of substantive legislation put forth that people actually went to town fighting for to bring it into fruition. Nor have you. All you've heard is people talk about it. Things are not getting better. And here's another one that folk can't see, and I call this our blind spot. See, most of us have this my guy syndrome. Well, my guy is okay. It's the other guy that's over there that's the problem. If we can get rid of him, my guy will be able to get something done. The second problem is the ineffectiveness of politicians. There are those that will say, I have a 95% constitutional voting record. I have a 65%. Or I have an 80%. What good is it if bad legislation continues to pass?
Amen.
It's ineffective. And we continue to deny this. And we keep sending them back because they say, I'm fighting for you. Well, if every time you get in the ring for me and you get your butt kicked, I'm going to stop putting you in the ring. And the third problem, the complicitness. Now this is a hard one, and I hope y'all don't get mad with me and tell me to take my ball and go home. But there is complicitness in the corruption that is taking place in D.C.
That's right.
On both sides of the aisle. It is undeniable. Chris Christie, who was being touted as the guy for 2016, just did a compromise in New Jersey where they're going to allow in-state tuition rates for illegals. My daughter is in Florida, been down there since for 3 years. I went online, read all the rules on how to get domiciled. She moved down there, got her own apartment, working. She's registered to vote in Florida. She's got a driver's license in Florida, and yet she was denied. And guess what? She's an American citizen, a legal one. But illegals, Chris Christie compromised with Democrats. That is complicitness. Complicitness. Now this is another one we talk about Obamacare. I hate Obamacare. But I am one of the few people. So I've been making YouTube videos for almost 8 years. When Hillary Care failed, I said, okay, Republicans, we have an opportunity. Let's do something to address the issues with our current healthcare system so we don't have to fight to defeat another Hillary Care. And they did absolutely nothing. Now we have Obamacare and they want to repeal it. It's unconstitutional. Well, it's going to do this. It's going to do that. Well, if Obamacare is so bad, why aren't they doing anything about talking about repealing the Patriot Act? Violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. Why aren't they talking about doing something about TSA and FISA, where we have people who represent us in this state signed on it in the affirmative, a violation of our right to be left alone. You know, the Fourth Amendment is something that was new for our country. A lot of stuff in our Constitution, you know, we borrowed from the Greek, from the Romans, even from Great Britain, but we say, you know what? Let's take it a step further. We got the Fourth Amendment, the right to be left alone. No search and seizure without probable cause. Police can't come and kick your door down just because they feel like it. We had that. But it is being circumvented by Patriot Acts and FISA Acts and indefinite detention. But ain't nobody raising hell about repealing those. They had an opportunity to do something about Obamacare, and they didn't do anything for 12 years. And now we got Obamacare, and we got to deal with that. Just more bad legislation that passed in spite of those that are there voting for us and fighting for us. They lost, and we pay the price. The good news is this, folks. The power belongs to you. You have the power to change it all. It's going to require a couple of things. But before I tell you those couple of things, let me tell you some examples, because I like to give you real world examples. Scott Walker. One man stood up and changed the room and backed those folk down in the unions. The two congressmen out there in Colorado got recalled because folks said, no, you're not messing with our guns. Second Amendment has already been spoken for. Why is that still an issue? Because they want to disarm you. Who owns most of the guns legally in this country? Middle class white Americans. So why do you need gun control? Gun control is not for law-abiding citizens. Oh, but yes it is. Because you know what? Crooks don't give a damn about gun control. They're crooks. That's what they do. That's what they do. But that's where we are. But we have the power to take it back. Just recently in the news, John McCain was censored. You want to know why? 1,500 people had a vote. 321 were against it, but the remainder said, John McCain, we are censoring you because you seem to be more of a liberal than a Republican. Most of the legislation that you have either authored, co-authored, or supported was on the lines of liberal policies, liberal legislation. I didn't say it. Those folk that voted to censor him, they said it. I'm just telling you what they said. And John McCain is supposed to be a Republican. That brings me back to where we started. What Matt said, we need to elect some real Republicans. We have to do our homework. And we have to be prepared to do something that we've never done before. And that is follow our own heart and mind and not what we're being told to follow.
That's right.
I've got a list of all the bad legislation that every person in Georgia has voted for. It's out there for everybody, but most of us won't take the time to go and read it because we think our guy, that blind spot, is fighting for us. And he's not, because the bad legislation is still being passed. Now, I don't mean no offense. I'm a Christian. But there's only one document that I need if you send me to D.C. that will allow me to do my job. And it's the United States Constitution. I don't need my Bible. My Bible is for me. My faith is personal. You don't have to believe like I do in Jesus Christ and that he died and was raised on the third day and did all of that for the remission of my sins that I might have eternal life. You don't have to believe all of that. But if you believe in my personal and individual freedoms and liberties, we'll get along just fine. If you believe that it's wrong to rape, murder, and pillage, we'll get along just fine. Our Constitution was not put together by all Christian folk. There was some atheists in the room. There was some agnostics in the room. The problem is we got folk want to bring in a whole bunch of stuff which has caused the bastardization of the Constitution. Just like with the Bible. We have people bastardizing the Bible. They've done the same thing with the Constitution. One group is in the pulpit and the other group is up there behind the podium in D.C. Are you prepared to do something different? Or are you going to continue to ignore these undeniable truths, things you cannot get away from? You can't. If I vote no to bad legislation 100% of the time, but the bad legislation still passes, send me home. If I go and start voting for bad legislation, send me home. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I'll take questions if you have any. It only takes one person to change a room. Just one. No waiting on a, well, nor do I need a whole bunch of other folk. Because see, I'm going to take it to the American people. I'm going to take it to the residents of Georgia. I'll expose it and let you take out the trash. That's your job. You're the ones who send them. You're the ones who are supposed to send them home. If they don't want to get in line and do what you sent them to do, remember, we the people, not them in D.C. We the people. Not them in D.C. And if you don't believe that one man can change the room, I'll give you the example of Jesus Christ. Change the world. Martin Luther King killed Jim Crow. Abraham Lincoln, even though a lot of people don't like Abraham Lincoln, I like him because he emancipated slaves. I can give you a list of folk, just solitary individuals, that changed the room simply because they stood up against that which they knew was wrong.
That's right. Amen.
And that is what Georgia needs today.
That's right.
I'm done.
Like we did with Jody, if you have any questions for Mr. Grayson, please raise your hand.
Yes, sir.
Derrick, just not being familiar with you, can you give me a little bit about your background, any political background in the past?
I have no political experience other than that of being a 53-year-old man who has been taken from the government 53 years too long. So I know what it is to be abused by the government. I think that's enough experience for me. That was the way it was intended to begin with. They never intended for folk to become career politicians or to write legislation that's so complicated the average man can't understand what the heck is in it. That's not what it was intended to be. I'm a father of all girls. I grew up in Atlanta. I served in the United States Navy for 6 years. Honorably discharged, in case anybody's wondering. And I have a past. I've done some things. But the beauty of America and the beauty of God is redemption and forgiveness.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
You were talking about tax reform plans and all that. What do you view as being a proper tax reform plan?
I'd like to see a consumption tax. If I make it, I want to keep it in my pocket. If I spend it, I pay a tax based on what I'm buying. Some things shouldn't be taxable, necessities and things of that nature. A lot of folks throw around the word fair tax, but you have folk out there that just don't want to pay no taxes and they think no tax is fair, so I'll put the word consumption tax. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You're an excellent speaker. That
Thank you.
goes without saying. But I wanted to ask how your felony conviction has affected your campaign as you've gone about the state.
It hasn't affected my campaign at all. If somebody asks, I tell them. Nothing to hide. It may affect their choice on who they'll vote for, but you could do worse.
We have. Some of them have left there with felony convictions.
I'm interested to know one of the problems that the GOP has had, or maybe I should say the conservatives have had, is speaking out to different groups. We're actually having a training session at the end of this month, and this is part of what we're going to talk to people about, is how to talk to those groups who don't normally vote for Republicans. Some of those are young people. They voted overwhelmingly for Democrats, even in states like New Jersey, where Christie took the large majority of every single group except young people 18 to 29, and of course African Americans. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about how to take the message that you're giving, and if I could narrow it to the African American community, that would be great.
Sure. First, and don't mean any harm, I despise, I loathe, I detest the term African American. I was born here. I ain't lost nothing in Africa.
I don't like it either. I was just trying to be as politically correct as possible.
So, I meet people where they are, and I say things that typical candidates, the typical candidate will not say. When I'm talking, to my knowledge, I think I am the only candidate that is actually going into the black community and holding meet and greets and speaking at their functions. I meet black people where they are. Traditionally, I've even had to educate my own mother and father, and my brother and sister, and other folks. But I meet them where they are. And when you meet people where they are, and a perfect example, when Jesus, before he even spoke to the multitudes, he fed. He dealt with their hunger, he had a captive audience, and then he stood up to teach. When I talk to black people, I say, okay, I know I'm running as a Republican. I already know you hate my guts. You think I'm a traitor and a sellout. Can we just set this over here for just a couple of minutes? Yeah, okay, well, because I know you, I'll put it aside for a minute. Okay, good. So now that I put that aside, I said, let's talk about some things that are undeniable. Has black-on black crime gotten any better? No, it's gotten worse. The job situation amongst blacks gotten any better? No, it's gotten worse. Are our schools any better in the inner city? No, they suck. What else is going bad with black folk? Well, you name it. They ain't got no job. So, when I then point out, let's look at cities like Detroit. Or better yet, Atlanta and Decatur. Black sheriffs, black police chiefs, black mayors, black CEOs, plenty of black judges, plenty of black officers, yet they suck when it comes to the issues affecting black folk. You got all this black leadership, liberal Democrats in most cases, and nothing, absolutely nothing, is changing or getting better for you. Now, how long are you going to keep blaming the white man or the Republican Party when they aren't even down here in your neighborhood? They can't. And then I have their attention. And this is why you need to support me. I am about equal access. I will address issues that nobody on the liberal side or the Republican side have addressed, like the war on drugs and how it disproportionately impacts minorities. It's a problem that needs to be dealt with, and nobody has dealt with it, not even Barack Obama. So I meet black folk where they are, and it's easier to relate to them. When I talk to white folks, I meet you where you are. Most of you forget that I'm black if you close your eyes. But when I talk about gun control, I tell you the truth. They want your guns. They aren't after our guns. We've been killing our children in the black neighborhoods for the last 20 and 30 years. They ain't start talking about gun control until white kids start getting killed in these schools. Think about it. This ain't nothing new. And of course, I have to be careful because I don't want somebody to accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist. So I try to stick with the low-hanging fruit. Things like FISA, TSA, things of that nature. Things that are easier for folk to grasp, things that they can relate to. And most white America can relate to gun control issues. Most white folks now are starting to be able to relate to job issues. We got a bunch of congressmen that have supported trade legislation in this at the federal level that impacts jobs. Call Cisco's technical support. They're over in India. Call Priceline's customer service. They're down in Mexico. Those used to be American jobs, people. Okay, so when you talk about things or meet people where they are, it's easy to relate to them. But the biggest trick is to get them to get rid of that blind spot about my guy. That's my biggest challenge. I have not accepted a single dime from special interests or special groups, gays, blacks. I accept money from every nickel we've collected has come from an individual across gender lines, across color lines, across sexual orientation. Why? Because I tell folk, I am the one guy that's going to represent everybody equally. I don't care about any of those individual things you got going on in your life, but you are entitled to what the Constitution has guaranteed you. And that's all I owe you if you send me. Yes, sir.
You gonna be at the debate at Adele?
If they invite me, yes.
Were you invited? Or have you been invited?
Well, I got a phone call. I got a phone call saying, yes, you are invited, because somebody came back and said they didn't see my name here or there, and they got to asking questions. So the gentleman, his name is Vance, he was nice enough to call me personally and say, Derrick, I want you to know, you are welcome to come to Adele, Georgia. I said, well, I'll be there. Yes, sir.
All right, we hear all the time, and we see it all the time, the disproportionate numbers of black families that do not raise a child from fruition through completion. Why? What are you gonna do about that if you are elected?
Well, now, let me tell you where it started. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, New Deal, Great Society. Little program that they put out to help the farmers during the Great Depression. Some subsidies they call.
What you gonna do?
You asked the question, so let me get to it. A deal was made to take some of that money and give it to the blacks. One of FDR's aides said, well, you know what, we need to get something in exchange for that. So there was a shift. They had the mayors and the black preachers in the northern cities say, look, if you switch from the Republicans, you know, most blacks were Republicans. If you switch from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, you can grab hold of some of this money. And of course, over time, we get past the Depression, they decide to cull out those monies and they redefined it as welfare. Now, farmers were still getting subsidies. Matter of fact, we got farmers that still get subsidies today. But what happened with the black families, they came in with a new rule. If you're going to receive these monies, the father can't be in the household. And government checks replaced the father.
Yep.
This is why I will never, ever be a Democrat. I despise that party for what they did because they basically single-handedly destroyed the fabric of the black family. How do we fix it? We have to start teaching people to do better, and we got to get government the hell out of the way. Give people opportunities so that they can go and work. Start squeezing off the teat and encourage people to go and do for themselves. If you'd be surprised what people would do if there was simply an opportunity for them to do for themselves.
But don't you have to teach them to speak where people can understand them first?
Well, first off, sir, I know folk that aren't just black
I know.
that can't
Yes,
speak.
I
So please don't think that it's isolated to just black
I've been
families.
all over the world, I know.
Oh,
I know what
okay.
you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Always one, isn't there?
I'm sorry?
There's always one.
I reckon there is. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
It seems to me like one of the problems we have with our politicians is career politicians. What is your idea on term limits? Maybe it would be a start.
First off, I believe in term limits. I would like to see it 4 years for a congressman, 4 years for a senator, and they go home. And no lifetime pension. We have our troops. Now, this is heartburn for me because I served. And when I served, I read my contract. And I knew that I was going to serve up to the giving of my life if it came down to it. No mistakes about that. When people give of themselves to serve their country and serve their country proudly, when they come home broken, they shouldn't have to fight for care. They shouldn't end up homeless. They shouldn't have a higher suicide rate than civilians. And there's one guy who always talks about, I believe in a strong military, and it sickens me. Why aren't you doing something about the men that came home broken? Start with them first. What greater way can you show that you believe in a strong military by taking care of those that serve in it, protecting you? So that's, military is those servicemen who serve for this country, and I loathe the fact that we've turned them into a mercenary force to promote our foreign policy. It needs to stop. So I'm an open critic of what we've done with our military. I'm an open critic of how we treat our soldiers. We wouldn't have known what was going on in Walter Reed had it not been leaked. We wouldn't have known we were being shafted by the government had not Snowden told us. Our representatives should have told us that. Matter of fact, they should have stopped it. And when I heard one say, we have rules in place that prevent us from talking to other representatives or sharing it with the public. But then you've already violated your oath of office, and that was to support the Constitution and our Fourth Amendment rights. I'm done.
Yeah.